What's up, everyone? Normal Christians Podcast. My name is Bo. As always, I reserve the right to get smarter. And before I even jump into this episode, I think I got to give a little apology to those of you who listen. Last week, I was MIA. I didn't put out really anything last week, except on Saturday, I threw something up that I recorded whenever I was in Rio at Copacabana Beach. But yeah, I was just still traveling and meant to do some stuff on the road, but just never got around to it. Either I was doing things or honestly just didn't feel like it on vacation. So last week you really didn't get anything. Not that I don't know, 5 of you who listen or whatever it is. Sorry that you're missing out. But no, it really, I didn't have anything, but that's because of travel. And then I actually got back and I was just pretty tired. And so finally recording now for this week. But I mean, this week, as you're listening to this, I will actually be on the road again for most of the week. I am going to Alaska for a few days. I take off on Sunday night after church, after I do my job, as a pastor, and I'll be gone until midweek. So just a quick trip, but back-to-back trips. Went to South America, did all kinds of awesome stuff there, and then I'm headed to Alaska, going the complete opposite direction to hopefully see the Northern Lights. I'm going to Fairbanks, and I'll drive up to the Arctic Circle and car camp and have some fun there, hopefully. And like I said, hopefully see the Northern Lights. Truly one of my travel bucket list items. But I just had to start with that, and I might sound a little different because I'm experimenting with some new podcasting equipment, new microphone, new way of doing things, and I'm going to keep experimenting. I know sound hasn't been great in the past, so hopefully getting clear sound here and a good sound, but we'll see. Just experimenting, going through the process with all of this. But with that being said, man, this episode, I want to talk about something in honor of me being in Alaska, because whenever you hear this, I will be in Alaska at that time. Specifically, I will be in Fairbanks, in that area, like I said, the Arctic Circle. But since I'll be in Alaska, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do something about Alaska with this episode, something that I think is rather interesting. It's a unique community in Alaska, in specifically the city, I believe it's called Whittier, Alaska. I am sorry, old Whittier, or those of you who are from Alaska or care deeply about Alaska, if I'm mispronouncing that. Should be no surprise if you listen to me. I mispronounce things all the time, terrible with names, but I believe that's it. But I've come across this community a little while back, and I find it absolutely fascinating for a few reasons, as you're about to find out. And my sourcing on this is an NPR article, a CBS News article, and just really some different videos and things like that surrounding this fascinating little town and community. But here's some background information. This little town, Whittier, it's a town that's about 60 miles from Anchorage, Alaska, and there's only one way in and out of the town. So very, very interesting. It's got this a little bit remote. It's got this tunnel that goes to the town, and they actually shut it down at night. So from one of the articles, the path to Whittier goes straight under a mountain into a tunnel bored through more than 2 miles of solid rock, and that tunnel shuts down at night, leaving Whittier cut off until the morning. I mean, that's crazy. Hopefully you don't need to go do something or have an emergency or anything like that in that town, because there is just no way in or out of that town. And actually, I read a different article, and maybe it was from a video. I think it was an article, but someone talking about how people don't make it back from, let's say they go out on the town in Anchorage or they go do something somewhere. There have been people at times who do not get back in time, and they are just stuck. There's no opening the tunnel. People have talked about how they have had to sleep in their cars or just go somewhere else because they cannot get into their town. Just super fascinating. But what makes this town interesting isn't the fact that it just shuts down like that. There's really just one way in and out of town like that. What really makes this town interesting is that in the town there's this tower or this residence, 14-story building, and I'm going to butcher the name. Again, no surprise here. Begich, Begich, Begich Tower, whatever it is. But what's interesting about this is this tower, because this tower is where most people live. Almost everybody in the town lives in this one place. As a matter of fact, one of the articles I pulled up or I was reading about this, it was titled "The Community Under One Roof." And that's what's so fascinating about this town. Pretty much the entire town lives in one place, in one residence, if you will. And this residence was a former Army barracks, and it looks like, if you were looking at it, an aging hotel. And that's, again, where most of the town's residents live. About 300 or so residents live at that place year-round. And one of the articles said that many of them are actually even new families. And there's a school in the town, because, of course, you would need a school if you have families. And oddly enough, the school is not in that building, but it is connected by a tunnel. So this town seems to have a fascination with tunnels. I guess whenever you live in a place like this in Alaska, tunnels make sense. And the school has about 50 students from age 3 to 18. So very small school, but I mean, they make it work. But this tower was originally built by the military during the Cold War as a no-frills barrack. When the military left, the Alaska Railroad took over. It now owns almost all of the inhabitable land in Whittier. And that's important because, I don't know about you as you're hearing about this, but whenever I heard about this town and I heard about the fact that pretty much all of the town's residents live in one building, my thought was, well, that sounds stupid. I mean, that sounds kind of dumb. Why? I mean, I guess it has its benefits, as I'll get to in a second, but someone's not branching out a bit, like maybe just build your house somewhere else. Seems like a good area for a B&B. I don't know, something like that. Branch out a bit. Why is everybody in just one building, one little area? And that's really the answer, is because apparently this railroad company owns, the Alaska Railroad, whatever it is, it owns almost all of the inhabitable land in Whittier. And then one of the articles had a quote from some guy named Dickinson. That person said, "No one's going to build a home on property that they don't own," and that's a fair point. I mean, you're not going to invest in property, invest in building a building, especially in a place like Whittier, Alaska, not exactly a tourist destination or a place people are beating down to live. You're not going to spend your money building a house on land you don't own. So that's a little bit of the reason why everyone lives in this place. And again, that's what makes this town so fascinating to me, is pretty much all the residents, all of the people live under one roof in this one big 14-story building. So this one building pretty much houses the entire community, and that's crazy. It's just nuts to me. And you would think, can that building hold everything that you would need? But apparently it does, because in interviewing some of the people and talking about the tower, it talked about how they have a little grocery store that's stocked with at least the essentials. There's a post office. It says there's a notary. It even has a church apparently in the building. All of it, as the article said, is just an elevator ride away. And then a quote, it says, "We don't need all of the big box stores. We don't need all of the so-called conveniences of a large city," to quote somebody from that town. And look, I get what you're saying. Dave is the one who said that. Whoever Dave is, shout out to you. I get what you're saying, Dave. But really, I mean, we're talking about everything in this one building. I've lived in a city, maybe not a huge city like some people live, but I've lived in urban life, and I get the draw of urban life, right? You're not getting a bunch of land. You're not getting a bunch of your own personal space or anything like that, but what you're doing is you're trading it in for the amenities of city life, where you can just walk down the street to restaurants or entertainment or all those sort of things. It's all nearby. You don't have to, depending on the city, you don't even have to own a vehicle. If you're in some of the big cities, like let's say New York City or whatever it is, you don't even need a vehicle. all the amenities, all urban life, it's there for you, but all that's not Whittier, Alaska. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's different video tours of this building that houses the city, and it looks quaint, but yeah, I don't know, Dave. I don't know. I think maybe I would like a big box store or something like that. So certainly my reaction to Whittier, as I've heard about it and seen some things, is okay. It's very interesting. Certainly doesn't seem like it would be a place that I'd want to live. Not least of which because it's in Alaska. No offense to Alaska. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be checking you out very soon. But I'm not a fan of the cold. Anybody who knows me knows that. So going to live in Alaska does not seem like a place. I mean, I live in Colorado, which is already maybe enough, but certainly it's still not even Alaska. And this idea that your town gets shut down every night, there's no in and out, all that sort of stuff, that's nonsense. I'm not all for that. So really, whenever I heard about this town, I was shocked. Again, here's a whole town, pretty much its entire populace, living under one roof. I mean, you just go to a different floor, and there's a different person there that you know. I mean, I came from a small town, and I live in a way small town now, really rural, really away from everyone. So I understand a little bit about not being near amenities or, quote-unquote roughing it in a sense of not having some of those, some of the nice aspects of city life or the big box stores. I get that. But I also can just take a drive, to a very big town, which I guess they could say they can too. But I'd imagine during the winter or, hey, even at night, that's not possible, a certain point at night. Because I drive to, as I've mentioned before, Fort Collins, a city nearby a lot, to hang out with friends and do things. And yeah, I get back pretty late sometimes, and I would just be apparently stuck out of my own town if that was the case. So all of that, it's just so fascinating about this town. Again, everyone under one roof, everyone just living life, everything's there. So whenever I heard about it, whenever I thought about it, I just thought, oh, what a miserable place to live, to stay. It just seems miserable. It just seems terrible. But I do have to be honest with you. I kind of see some goodness, some good things from something like this. First, I think me living in the town that I do now, again, out in the middle of nowhere, really, there's no amenities out here. We have a gas station. We have a little store. And the gas station serves food a little bit, maybe during lunch mostly. There's a liquor store nearby for those who need their liquor, their alcohol. But other than that, there's nothing. There's nothing. We have to drive everywhere. We have to go somewhere else. There's a post office. I guess I should have gave a shout out to the post office. And we have our church, which I'm pastor of, the school, all that. So my town is actually decently similar to Whittier in that kind of isolated, kind of just the bare necessities. Again, the school's small, a little bit bigger than this, but actually probably not tremendously bigger. But yeah, still bigger. So I started thinking about it, and I go, you're kind of hating on old Whittier, but you kind of have the same situation going where you live. And I just started thinking, like, well, outside of the terrible Alaska cold weather thing, which I'm never going to be a fan of in any sort of way, I just think that maybe I underestimated old Whittier. Underestimated or certainly looked down on what life would be like there. Now, it certainly has to have its drawbacks. It has to. Certainly entertainment. I wonder how internet is out there to do some different things, but it's funny. One of the articles talked about the social life out there. Quoting from the article, it says, "That said, it's a hard place for a social life." And there's a quote. "There's not a lot of, single people in their 20s and 30s here. I mean, I don't know why," Anna laughed, the one giving the quote. And when asked about Whittier's social life, somebody else said, "Yeah, that can be a little troublesome." So that makes sense. A small town like that, 300, and really not in the shadow of anything. Pretty far drive, but then the town gets shut down. also every night. See, it does make sense that the social life would be a little rough. Also, if you're from that town, that means you know everybody. And if you grew up there, again, you grew up with everybody. So I can imagine social life will be a little bit rough there. But again, I guess I can't say anything because where I'm at, there's certainly not a lot of single people in their 20s and 30s. There's really almost nobody in my stage of life out here. So again, I don't really guess I have much to stand on in Hayden on Whittier when it comes to that. But I think the biggest thing about this town, besides the fact that it's just fascinating, the whole town living in one building. Also, what happens when the power goes off? What a miserable experience. Anyway, I'm spiraling a bit. Just so interesting thinking about it. I just think that the community aspect to me is actually kind of a appealing sort of thing. Again, I'm not about to go live there and certainly have no desire to do that or to live in that sort of situation. But as I thought about it, I thought, there's a community aspect that would be actually really cool. I live in a small town, and certainly the community aspect out here is great. But even more so, if we lived all in the same building, well, first, just get chills, shivers thinking about that. I don't know if I'm for that, all that, but I mean, if you're in that situation, community would be, it'd be a necessary thing, right? And that's almost a quote. A quote from one of the articles says, "The community here, it's so nice that you don't ever really feel sad." And someone was talking about how it looks depressing out there, and you always have someone to talk to. And hey, that's way more than what most people have. Even in big cities, even surrounded by so many people feel alone, or they don't have a nearness or people close to them nearby or anything like that. So that, for all the downfalls, all the downsides of something like Whittier, the community aspect is something I didn't even think about. But it would have to be an incredibly close-knit community. And as a matter of fact, there was two people getting interviewed in one of the articles. It says, one of the persons says, "We're too small to function in isolation." Another person said, "You have to collaborate." And that first person responded, "You do. You have to be willing to work with each other." And I actually think that's a beautiful thing. And community's been on my mind a lot because, going back to what I said, I'm actually fairly decently isolated here in this town. Doesn't mean don't have great people around me. I'm a pastor. I have people in the church who are incredible. Love my church, love the people, and they're great people. But we're just in different stages of life. Most of my people are older, certainly married or were married, and most of them have kids who are older and have moved out. There are some people a little bit closer to my age, but they're married and have families a little bit older than me. So, but all that to say, I'm pretty isolated. I just don't have a lot of people specifically who are in my stage of life. And that's okay. That happens. I feel like I'm supposed to be out here, so no big deal. But it has really drilled into my mind the importance of community. That's why I like my friends out in Old Fort Collins in that area. I think it's important for us to have community. But even still, within the church, I've been really pressed with COVID and a lot of things going on too. It's just drawn my attention to the importance of community. Having people around you when times are tough or when things are difficult or maybe when you're going through difficulty, because that's another thing about being at a small little community in a small church specifically is you know what's happening with people. And I'm not talking about gossiping, no, because obviously I'm not dealing with gossip. That's wrong. Other episode, you go listen about why gossip's a sin. But you hear people being sick, things going on in their life that they need prayer with, and you're able to talk to them and pray with them or meet with them if they need, or just talk in general with people in the community about what's going on. And you just see this how important community is and why the church should be a community. I was talking to a real good friend from back home and his wife, and they were discussing some different church things, and they're trying to figure out some stuff with the church that they're at, and if they want to stay or if they're looking for a new church, blah, blah, blah. But we were talking about different aspects, and I kept bringing up community, 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 because church at its heart is a community. It's a community of believers. And when we're doing life together, it's a beautiful thing. We're there to encourage. We're there to help out. We're there to just lock arm in arm in difficult times. Or forget the difficulty, just the good times too. I mean, I see in a small town like I'm in, the local high school, their sporting events, I mean, it draws everyone because it's a social thing. And it's just cool to see people celebrate with each other and get together, and different events happen, and everyone does their thing. And so it's really cool. So as I think about this little town, for all the negative things, and trust me, I believe there is quite a few negative things about Old Whittier, I do think the community aspect's actually really cool. Them talking about how they have to work together. They can't just live in isolation. Ultimately, they know each other. There was some video I was watching about it, about the teacher, basically sees the kids grow up and knows the families, and there's trust, and there's all this that comes with it that I think is pretty beautiful. And as a Christian, as a pastor, I see that community aspect, and I go, man, that's so cool. For all the drawbacks of something like Whittier, hopefully I'm saying the name right, been saying it that way the whole video, but for all the drawbacks, and I believe there are many, that's something I think is awesome. The community that without a doubt forms with being in one building with pretty much your whole town. And I think it's valuable. I think that, as that person said, sure, I'm sure there's people who have bad days, get depressed or whatever it is, but there's always someone to talk to. There's always somebody nearby, I'm sure, to have a shoulder to cry on, or hear your story, or just talk about things, share interest, whatever that is. So, really, what started out for me as this weird little town out in Alaska where pretty much everybody lives under one roof, it kind of made me think about the importance of community. And I'll do more about community. I'm sure you'll hear me talk about it a lot because I think it's such an important topic, especially for us as Christians. But, man, I just kind of laughing at the idea of living under one roof with everybody, kind of laughing at the idea of the town one way in, one way out, and it shuts down at a certain point at night. And there's all the kind of craziness that comes with just this town. Actually, being a little blown away by inevitably having the community like they have, and thinking, for all the drawbacks, again, they do have something special, something that many people don't have, which is a community, which is a group of people to trust, to be around, to maybe even love on you and support you in life. And that's something that, hey, you may live in an area with tons of amenities, tons of great things, maybe a huge area. But boy, if you're missing community, if you're missing that closeness, you're missing those people, you're missing out on something really, really special, really powerful, and really important, especially if you're a Christian. And so, yeah, Whittier may not have it all. It may be interesting to say the least. And it certainly is not a place I would want to live, or honestly would even want to visit. But they do have something, I think, special. A great community feel, undoubtedly. And people around to care for you, and as that person said, to be an ear to listen whenever you want. So that's kind of this episode, is this little chat about this odd little community, the community under one roof. Shout out to Whittier. Shout out to everyone living their lives in one place for all intents and purposes. And, I hate to say it one more time, but for all the drawbacks, and there are many, they do have something I think is pretty special, pretty cool. That community, all of that. But hey, you may have made it to this point and thought, look, yeah, all that's cool, but that is still weird, and I agree with you. I think I would sacrifice a little community to not be living under one roof with everybody in the town. I kind of like my privacy. And even where I'm at, privacy, could be interesting. But at least I've got my own place, my own area, my own stuff. And boy, to just be in one little room in that thing. Woof. Yeah. So anyway, you Whittier people, you go for it. You live your life. You enjoy it. Have a great one. Not for me. Even though community is awesome, I still think it's weird. Am I alone? I mean, don't you feel like it's weird? Everyone living at one place? I don't know. Certainly crime wouldn't be an issue or anything like that. I mean, you would know everybody, but okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to keep spiraling down this hole. It's just such a unique and weird little town. I've got so many questions, so many thoughts with it, but hey, they have that one, at least one great thing going for them with that, with the closeness, with the community feel. So that's what I've got today. Little chat about Whittier. And just I find it interesting. It's just a topic that I found interesting. City all under one roof, and also I think I took something a little from it, from all the weirdness, something good. So I hope you enjoyed it. However you're listening, wherever you're listening, I really appreciate you taking the time to do it. And before I go, 3515, and I will see you again next time.